another edition of Head to Head, organized by Social Advocacy Debate Network. My name is Opia Victor, and of course, I've always been the moderator, and I'm the moderator for today's debate. So, today's motion basically explores the delicate balance between judicial welfare and judicial independence. Judges are entrusted with upholding justice and interpreting law without fear or favor. To support them in carrying out this responsibility, government often provides welfare packages, including housing, certain funds, and certain allowances to them. This particular thing has become an issue among different scholars within the intellectual space as to whether this in and of itself is a judicial support or a way to capture the judiciary. And in today's debate, we have two great debaters, Mr. Victor Bisong and Mr. Gus Olisek, who will be coming here to dissect for us to find out whether the provision of judicial housing in itself, whether it's an act of welfarism for the judges in itself, or it is an act to capture the judiciary in itself. So both speakers will have 7 minutes speaking time, of which after their 7 minutes, we'll ask them a question which they will respond to in 2 minutes, and then that makes it the entire. Then when they are done with that, they will now have 4 minutes rebuttal time for each speaker. For every other person who is here, if you intend to speak during this speech, we would love you. If you intend to speak or contribute, you have 3 minutes for contribution and 2 minutes for your questions. I would love you to type your questions and your contribution in the chat box as it goes on. So without wasting more time, Mr. Victor Bisong, are you ready for us? Ready when you are, sir.
Thank you very much. So today's topic is government's provision of housing for judges, legitimate welfare or judicial capture. And in today's debate, I will be defending the fact that this provision is legitimate welfare or judicial capture, as against the entire narrative that people have about that particular thing. But firstly, let's establish something. The fact is, the mindset people have about judges, about the court, is one that is sacred. It's one that people associate judges to be people that should never show any form of greed. That is why, to a very large extent, judges are never even allowed to receive gifts, except from very close friends and family members. It also goes on to show that judges do not even have the ability to go on strike because of the nature of their jobs. Judges do not even have ability to call out government for government to look at their own welfare schemes. Judges have been maligned for a very long time. Judges have been kept in those kind of situations for a very long time. These judges, to a very large extent, also suffer the economic realities every other person suffers. The question now is, with the limitations that these judges face and the challenges they still have to deal with in terms of economy, should governments now be blamed, look in their direction and offer support to them? This is the nature of today's debate, and I want us all to understand. Today's debate is not about prioritizing judges. Today's debate is saying, these people that cannot go on strike like ASU and every other union, these people who have to refuse gift and other benefits, other gratuitous benefits, should they be looked at? Should they be favored? Why should society feel bad that these judges are getting something that would raise their standard of living? That is what today's debate is about. And I want ISEC to understand that this debate is not necessarily a thing of saying that they are prioritizing judges over other persons. But today's debate is see how these people who cannot fight for themselves, is it wrong for government to legitimately look at them and provide welfare facilities for them? In the actual instance circumstance, WIKE, who was the governor of Rivers State, provided judges with quarters, with living residences when he was governor of Rivers State. He's now the Federal Capital Territory Minister. Under the government of Tinubu, he has provided judges with further housing and accommodation. The question is, why should we necessarily tie this welfare policy, this welfare system, to judicial capture, when there are other ways upon which judiciary can be captured? Why should a public housing scheme that seeks to even make a public declaration of what government is doing be rooted or tied to judicial capture? That's what today's conversation is going to be, and I want us to follow me in this conversation. The second thing is that whose responsibility is it to provide for the welfare of judges? Should we abdicate or relinquish probably this duty to private individuals to do, or government should legitimately carry out all of this stuff? We think that necessarily government should actually be the ones to carry out this. The persons that are engaging in this welfare system or providing accommodation for judges are not private individuals. What this means is government, which has the responsibility to provide these residencies for them, is the one doing it. Whether we call it APC, whether we call it PDP, whether we call it politics, to the extent where these people are still within the purview of government and are acting as government officials, then that justification, that legitimacy is actually justified, right? Government have, neglected these people for a very long time. We think it is high time government begins to look in their direction, because government owes them that responsibility to act. It falls within government's duty to provide that kind of residences for judges, right? Now, the argument I would give in today's debate, firstly, would be that judicial independence works better with material security. There are three arms of government, right? We have the executive, the legislature, and the judiciary. While the nature of the judiciary is very sacred, it is that arm of government that is treated as second fiddle to others, right? National Assembly members call out government, they make their budget and make government give them huge sums of money. But an arm of government that's supposed to be independent and also have the material security that will make them independent necessarily cannot afford some of these things. The problem with this is that it makes these people loyal to the executive, because their next paycheck is actually going to, come from the executive. It's making the entire judiciary no longer independent. It's reducing that principle of democracy that comes with that tree, the separation of powers that exists within the system of democracy. So understand that the actual practice is democratic because it falls within the whole purview of providing independence to the judiciary. The idea of housing is such that makes judges able to carry out their activities very effectively. The second argument that we must understand in the conversation is that it's a constitutional obligation, not a favor. This particular provision of residence for judges is not necessarily government doing a favor to these people. It is something that can pass for their right. For instance, people like the president of Nigeria, imagine if we argue that why should the president get a house? But there are certain people who, even if the economy becomes so bad, they should be provided residence, accommodation, proper systems where they can carry out their activities. Why? Because they fall within that purview of people who should be protected in terms of providing certain material securities, right? So it is not a favor you are doing to judges. It is something that naturally comes by them being judges because of the nature of the office that these people hold. That's the second argument. The third thing I'm going to argue today is how, unlike personal gifts, institutional benefits do not compel judges to loyalty. Now, this is something that is very important in this conversation. The difference between personal gifts and institutional benefits is the fact that when somebody gives you money and tries to bribe you, it could influence you and it could get your loyalty. But when institutional benefits come, it is tied to your office and not tied to your person. So there's a lesser incentive for these judges to say they will be influenced as a result of their as a result of receiving these institutional benefits. Understand, personal gifts go to individuals. Institutional benefit goes to the office you are holding. So loyalty in most instances comes when people receive personal gifts and not when institutional benefits come. So this argument is very important for us to understand that these things cannot necessarily be tied to the fact that it's going to create kind of corruption in our system, right? And also, judges also understand that this thing is public, and the public presentation of all of this housing actually creates a kind of an awareness and public sentiments from people. The reason why this is important and why this is done in public is that judges know that people know that you have been given houses. There's a lesser incentive for judges to collect those houses and be loyal to the government, because they know that the masses will assume that government use those houses to bribe them. But in most instances, when government wants to do things with judges, they don't come in public to do these things with judges. They go privately to do this. They give them large sums of money, whether they are trying to induce them with money or they are trying to unduly influence them, probably kidnapping their family members, threatening, giving them security threats, and all of those things. So all of these things are necessary for us to understand that this particular principle is not necessarily tied towards judicial capture. If it was tied towards judicial capture, it would have probably come as financial inducements. It would have probably come as secret measures to see how they could get these people's loyalty. The mere fact that these things are public kind of gives judges that public awareness that the masses are aware. That consciousness of that, the consciousness of that makes judges a bit more careful in the way they handle cases. We cannot actually tie this provision of houses to judges, to whatever thing we want to call, as instead would come and argue in today's debate. I would end here for now because I know I'm behind time. I have other arguments to give, but I will not give them until Isak finishes to speak.
Okay, that was a very, very strong case that you brought in from your side. But then I have a question which I want you to respond to in 1 minute, because you started by mentioning that, of course, these persons are humans and they are subject to what an average human in the society is going to suffer. And I have this question. So if judicial independence requires not only actual impartiality, but also the absence of any reciprocal obligation, how can a judge receive a valuable continuing benefit from the executive without creating, even subconsciously, a norm of reciprocity? And why I'm asking this question is because, we might say that there are institutional benefits, but then a particular executive, in order to receive some form of benefit, might decide to alleviate this by giving them better housing or giving them better benefits while being judges. And that in itself, what's the guarantee that it's not going to subconsciously affect them to become partial in the society? Respond to this in 2 minutes.
Okay. Firstly, understand that institutional benefits are tied to offices. That is to say, if you are a judge, whether you are a judge handling the case of a particular executive official or not, you get to benefit that. Right? In most instances, they are not tied to individuals. But even if we want to argue or balance the weight of personal gift and institutional benefit, it still feels better. Our society works better when we deal with institutional benefits as against personal gift that comes to these judges. We feel that there are inducements, whether we want to tie it to personal benefit or government, whatever, we don't know the intentions of government. What we are saying is that judges need better welfare. Judges need better accommodation. So when judges are given that better accommodation as an independent arm of government that should also benefit as much as the other arms of government, we should not necessarily assume that these people are doing that to induce them. It is safe as saying if Senate gets cars, if we tie that thing for probably Senate gets exotic cars, we say they are getting exotic cars so that they can be rubber stamp senators or National Assembly members for the government. It means we really undermine the importance of those kind of cars in the runnings of these people. We must associate all of those institutional benefits to the functioning of these offices and not necessarily to all of those pecuniary interests that we could attach to them. As far as this debate is concerned, institutional benefits are to ensure that these people are more effective in the way they carry out their activities and not necessarily to serve the interests of people giving it to them. Because the executive are the ones that must sign this resources. So yes, they really give to them, but not necessarily to induce them, but to ensure that these people function effectively in their offices.
Okay, thank you very much for that fine response. We welcome Mr. Isaac to give us his own speech in this debate. Ready when you are.
Good evening, everyone. Am I audible enough?
Yeah, you are audible.
It's so beautiful to be here after the last episode that we had on Facebook. And I'm so excited to be having this conversation today about judicial capture or judicial welfare. Ladies and gentlemen, please listen to what I'm about to say keenly, right? Because this is very crucial to the fate of our democracy, to the fate of Nigeria as a country, and for the trust that as citizens we have on the judicial processes that has always been the last hope of the common man. Judiciary should not be something that we should do politics or play politics with. People need to be sure that the judiciary is acting independently. And very importantly, it is not just enough that that the judiciary is independent. People need to believe that the judiciary is independent. I don't know, Victor, I don't know if you get what I'm trying to say. So even psychologically, people need to believe that whatever the judiciary is saying at every point in time is something that's independent and not influenced by the externalities of gifts and what have you that the government gives. So, guys, it's just a few months to the general elections, and all of a sudden, judges are giving houses. These judges have been there for quite a long time without houses. And a few months to elections, they are giving houses. In Nigeria, almost every election results to court fights. So what happens when the government of the day has given houses to judges? Those judges, directly or indirectly, firstly, feel a sense of obligation to the government that gave them these houses. Why? Because contrary to what Victor says, he knows that he's lying though. Contrary to what Victor says, it is not institutional giving. It is discretionary from this government. So when the next government comes into power, unless they decide to, on their own, to give judges the houses, they will get, the judges are not going to get houses, right? So there are new judges who are going to come in tomorrow. They're not going to get houses. So this is for the benefit of those who are judges now and who will be judges from now till the time of the next election. Are you seeing how technical this giving is and how timely it is? Because we want to have our future mortgaged by politicians who are kleptomaniacs and greedy individuals who always only want to do things for their self-aggrandizement, right? Now, nobody, I'm not going to argue that we shouldn't give, that judges do not deserve to have houses, right? But then, in sane societies, right, the state should fund the judiciary through constitutionally guaranteed judicial appropriations, right? So, that will be administered independently by the judiciary itself, not as a discretionary gift or project of the executive. So, the executive's role is to release constitutionally appropriated funds, not to become the benefactor of judges. So, guys, I'll explain what this means. It means that constitutionally, if we know that we have a welfareism problem in Nigeria, which I actually think that we do, then let's solve the problem holistically, right? And say that according to the Constitution, every judge at so and so level is entitled to a house, whether now or the next 10 years. That means we are fixing the housing problem for judges. But then, if we also want to solve the problem of welfare, then judges need houses, but so does soldiers, so does teachers. These people also need houses the same way judges need houses. But how come there's the cherry picking of giving houses to just judges? What happened to soldiers? The Nigerian police have a terrible accommodation policy from the Nigerian government. If you go to any police barracks, you see how deplorable the state of their housing is and how terrible facilities the facilities that they have there are. But what happens? The executive arm of government does not care about those individuals because they don't matter on the grand scheme of things when election results get tried in tribunals and we get petitions for those results. So what Victor is saying is criminal. This is a criminal effort by the executive to put the judiciary in their underarm and ensure that they are always only, waiting for whatever it is that can be handed down to them. So I'm not saying that welfare packages are not good, but if it is actually genuine welfare, like Victor wants us to believe, then to be institutional, constitutional, such that it does not matter whether or not you do the bidding of a particular executive government or not. What happens is that every judge at particular levels get access to housing, right? Every teacher at a certain level, let's have that in our constitution. Every teacher at every level, every government worker at every level is entitled to particular benefits. Not a world where you begin to have houses and cars for politicians, and this is in a world where we have more and more issues that affect us as a country rather than giving houses to judges. But then secondly, is that it's not even a relevant thing at the moment. People who are judges are people who are in the middle class to a very large extent. They have money enough to afford accommodations for themselves and live comfortably, right? But we want to give them executive houses that might be way beyond their means, as the case may be. Whereas we have lack of access to good roads, basic amenities like power and electricity in Nigeria, which is the problem of the vast majority of people in Nigeria. But no, you don't want to solve that problem. You don't solve the problem of lecturers. Lecturers are going on strike every day in day out on Nigerian universities because they are asking for arrears of their gratuities that has not been paid. So the ones that are constitutionally the responsibility of government to do, they've not paid them. The ones that are constitutional. But then this government wants to make us feel that it is welfare when they want to give judges houses. Far be it from me, I don't believe that. That is entirely false and fraudulent, as the case may be. I feel that this is entirely fraudulent. If you want to solve the problem, then we will not have lecturers who are on strike asking for the barest minimum. Our lecturers do not even have cars to drive to drive, whereas judges are being given benefits and gifts, as the case may be, which I don't think is the case. So, firstly, even if you want to fix the welfare problem in the state, let it be constitutional and institutional, and not a world where you just come and cherry pick judges and give them housing a few months to the elections. I do not buy into that. I feel like that is very, very, very criminal. Secondly, this debate is not about whether judges deserve decent welfare. They do deserve decent welfare. The question is whether the executive arm of government should be the one providing the welfare that they deserve, and in the manner that creates a level of false dependence in the minds of these judges, right? And then secondly, it also brings public suspicion. People are going to definitely raise a eyebrow, right? Mr. WIKE did it when he was governor of Rivers State, and we see how he has put the whole state under his pocket, because the Rivers State is more like Mr. WIKE's private property, because he has bought everybody that needs to be bought with particular gifts, just like this, right? So judicial capture in and of itself, right, is a process by which the independence or impartiality of the judiciary is compromised, or reasonably appears to be compromised through influence, incentives, dependence from other branches of the government, which is the problem. So the first argument here is that judicial independence must be real and perceived. So firstly, it must be there in question, in reality, that our judiciary is independent. But then secondly, they have to be perceived to be independent. If you want to give judges money, you want to give judges houses, let it be constitutional. Let it be arranged and organized by the Judiciary Council and not the executive, right? When the executive build houses for judges, especially in a country like Nigeria, where allegations of executive interference with judiciary already exist, then the public begins to doubt entirely the fairness and independence of the judiciary, right? But then Victor spoke about separation of powers, right? And now this is going to entrench separation of power. I don't think that's the case, right? The executive, legislature, and judiciary are designed to check one another. These three arms of government are designed to check one another. So when the executive appears to be giving frequent benefits to the judges, then it strains the credibility of whatever it is that judgment that can come from the judiciary. But then very important is that the Nigerian context matters. In mature democracies, maybe in Norway or Denmark, we can have something like this. But in Nigeria, our institutions are not strong. So Nigeria has struggled with executive dominance, weak institutions, political patronage, public distrust in institutions. So in this context, executive-funded housing creates a genuine risk, or at the minimum appearance, it creates an avenue for judicial capture. So constitutional principles should be interpreted in the light of the realities of that institution, and not assumptions that come from ideas like, oh, let's give them let's give them houses right now. Because firstly, like I said, it is not even something that is the case that right now these people are living on the streets or they are suffering. No, it's just a means to put them under their arm. So I'm not going to even argue that, oh, maybe or maybe not. I am sure that this is an effort aimed at judicial capture, and I'm very, very sad that this is the case, right? So now, very importantly, right, Victor said something about whose responsibility should it be, right? So that is the major issue in Victor's first case, right? The Nigerian states should fund judicial welfare through constitutionally guaranteed judicial appropriations administered independently by the judiciary, not through executive controlled projects or discretionary executive benevolence, like what is happening right now. So you might want to say, oh, housing will not influence judges, right? But the influences are not always direct, right? They're not always direct. They could come from a lot of other small, little things that on the long run, these people begin to feel somehow indebted to the executive. Ladies and gentlemen, finally, before I end this speech, I would say, you and I are Nigerians, and we know how the executive function to ensure that the other arms of government bow to their whims and caprices. We must not allow such to continue. We have to speak up when we see things like this and advocate for a more holistic solution. And the more holistic solution is when welfare packages become constitutional and institutional, such that it is there. Whether or not this government is on board, these benefits come to people at particular ages. Why is this good? Because firstly, it gives individuals what to aspire to. Lecturers begin to aspire that if I work very hard and grow through the ranks, I'll get benefits because it's already entrenched in the Constitution and not through the benevolence of who is in power and who is not in power. I'm so proud to be on this side of the debate. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. We know you have a lot to give us in this week, but then I do have a question before you go into rebuttals and speeches. Yeah. So one thing Victor Bisong mentioned in this debate is that away from the fact that there is a burden for them to be judicially independent, yeah, that they are humans, and of course, when these institutional incentives don't exist, things like this housing and all, they have to rely on their own personal wealth, having to suffer things like issues of mortgages, landlords, and private financing itself. Why is dependence on those actors inherently less dangerous than the dependence on democratically institutional incentives that Victor Bisong tries to advocate for in this debate? Why is me relying as a judge on my personal wealth less dangerous than the institutional incentive that has been advocated for by Mr. Victor Bisong here in this debate?
If judges have welfare issues, then that is a problem of the Nigerian institution as a whole. That problem needs to be fixed. If someone is a judge, they should not be lacking bare minimum requirements for sustenance like housing. Victor Opia, a judge be lacking that. If that's the problem in the country, then imagine if what becomes the fate of ordinary school teachers, what becomes the fate of lecturers. If we don't solve this problem holistically, that we now wait for a time when they don't have mortgages, they are suffering, and then they are going through a lot, and then this should not even be the case in the first place. We have a lot of money in this country that goes into frivolities. Political office holders are buying cars in droves. They're getting gifted cars when people are lacking. People that are working for this country, our police, our soldiers are working for this country, and they cannot even afford bare minimum requirement for sustenance. If that's the case, then the solution is not for the executive to hand them down houses. No, the solution is that they should fix the system and ensure that a judge will not even have to be in the place where he doesn't even have these basic amenities and these basic necessities in the first place. It should not be the executive handing them down. The system. So, Victor, what I'm saying is that, according to what Victor Bisong is saying, because let's make this clear. If this debate is about fight that judges should not have access to houses by the Nigerian government, then I should not be here. Would I be foolish to come and argue that? That's not what the debate is about. The debate is about the context is Nyesom Wike and the Nigerian government giving housing to judges. So because as though we are debating in abstract, we are debating reality on ground. This is not saying that now it's not the constitution. No, it is on their benevolence they are giving it to them. So that means that if Victor Bisong becomes a judge tomorrow, unless the government of the day is benevolent like Nyesom Wike and his brothers in government, he will not get housing from housing. But I know Victor is a very dedicated lawyer and he will make a great judge one day of this country. And I want a system where he is guaranteed basic comfort as a judge, not one where when I become the president tomorrow, I will decide whether or not I want to dash Victor his house or not. No, he deserves better than that. So even what I'm saying is for his own benefit as Victor Bisong, we all deserve better in this country. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Right now, we'll be going to the rebuttal sessions where both speakers will have 5 minutes to rebut, because I've already seen a lot of hand gestures from Mr. Victor Bisong in response to what he said. But then, before we go into that, if you have a question and you cannot switch on your camera, please type your question in the chat box. It will be read after the rebuttal sessions. That's one. But then, if you do have a question and you'll be available to switch on your camera rather, when they are done with their rebuttal sessions, we'll call you forth to give your contributions or your questions. Please, for questions will be 2 minutes and contributions will be 3 minutes to 4 minutes. So without wasting more time, we welcome Mr. Victor Bisong to come and give us his rebuttal in this debate. 5 minutes.
Okay, thank you. Thank you very much. So ISEC has one job. The entire debate falls on one burden. He should not run away from that burden. And the burden is, why should government that wants to capture the judiciary prefer a public spectacle as giving judges accommodation than probably giving them millions or so much money that can afford all of those things privately, so that the masses will not mount pressure on the judiciary. Understand, a government that wants to induce the judiciary will not want too much pressure on the judges. Why? Because when judges are not seen to be, influenced, people would trust them more, as he had said. So it means that for those governments to actually build or create a public spectacle, the intent will not be to induce the judiciary. If the intent was to induce the judiciary, they would do it privately. That is the greatest burden that is on Isek's shoulder right now. He should not run away from that burden. Answer it and win this debate. Secondly, Isek talked about the fact that why should judges be given preferences? Why should you not build houses for soldiers or police officers and other people? Isek is actually, I don't want to believe that Isek is lying. I don't want to say it's lying, but I want to say that probably he has forgotten that I attended a federal science college. It's a science secondary school. There was a staff quarters in that school where teachers were meant to stay. In the police barracks, although dilapidated, at least there's residence for police officers, same as barracks for soldiers. All of these people, the VC of Unica has an official building, same as other principal staff. It is something that is incidental to most of these offices that these people have. It is very, very unfair for you to think that the mere extension of that gesture to judiciary, to judges, has become an undue influence on the judiciary. This is where Isek gets the entire conversation wrong. Isek feels that the money that was used to build accommodation residence for judiciary ought to have been used to pay ASU, so ASU can call off their strike. That is not necessarily true, because the fund that the Minister of FCT is using to build houses for judiciary is not the fund that ought to have been used to pay ASU. It is not necessarily that this is the fund that was kept to do other things, to provide general welfare system that has been used to provide accommodation for judges. I said this is an institutional benefit that accrue to you being a judge. And understand that all of these things that have to do with executive project like this are things that fall within the arbitrariness of government. For instance, Tinubu can decide to do this, but the next president can decide to buy them better cars. It does not necessarily mean that all the presidents must do a particular thing. The next president can decide to do anything else to see how he can better the aspirations of judges. The next person can decide to separate the powers of executive over judiciary. For instance, Isek talks about absolute independence of the judiciary, but from the constitution, the president appoints the chief justice of the country of Nigeria. The implication is that he looks at who probably is loyal to him or whoever he wants and appoints. That level of influence constitutionally already deprives the judiciary of that absolute independence that Isek probably talks about, right? So we think that you cannot take away the influence of executive from the judiciary, because of course the president appoints who the chief justice of Nigeria is and other justices of the Court of Appeal. This is very important in this conversation, and Isek must understand that all of these things are necessary to prove that to the extent where these people have other ways upon which they can influence judges, why should they rely on public spectacles? Isek talked about aspirations, and when these things are done institutionally and there's a structure that exists for judges, that people can aspire to be judges, we think that this housing in itself is something that creates aspiration. Aspiration works better in our side, because when people have housing, for instance, people will know that, okay, to be a judge does not necessarily mean that you have to come and suffer. You have to come and go through a whole stress of solving economic hardship, of paying house rent and getting allowances to probably pay housing allowances that may not be sufficient enough to cover the actual cost of living. These are the things. So people are more, build better aspirations, because of course they know that there will be opportunities. There's a possibility that government can give them houses. Understand that judiciary, based on the powers vested on the president to appoint Chief Justice of Nigeria, does not have that absolute independence. The resulting consequence is the fact that there is an overbearing influence already. You cannot take away that influence of the executive over the judiciary. Now, the question is, why should people think that housing for judiciary, for judges, is something that's going to influence them? He said talk about two things: influence and public perception. The reason why there's a public perception issue in this conversation today is because over the years, we've made it look like judges should remain poor. Judges should not have the ability to drive the best of cars. Judges shouldn't have the ability to live in the best of houses. So the barest minimum, which is like providing them residences, has become too much, that people are beginning to see, or would definitely begin to see, that the executive would influence these judges. Isek must also understand that these houses were not just built yesterday and given to them. Housing has already been done over a period, and they just commissioned this housing. So it was not just a political idea we just had yesterday so they can win the next election, because he made it look like it's just few weeks or months to election and they're giving judges houses. This thing has been there over the period. But why is it important, and mostly important, for judges to have this kind of welfare as against that the system that ISEC proposes? ISEC says, let every system be fixed. But that is not how government works. Even in the US, like the best of democracies in the world, what happens is there are systems that are not perfect. Government is a continuum. That's why when they do one today, they realize that they have not done the other, they do the other one. So it says we should just conduct and do an abracadabra and everything should not be perfect. There should be a perfect system for everybody. It doesn't work that way. For instance, today, judges have been given accommodation. Tomorrow, ASU, soldiers, in the definition of it, can also be met. Not everybody can have the welfare, their welfare accommodated at a particular instance. ISEC must understand this. But lastly, as I round off, it is important for us to understand that better welfare reduces corruption risks and incentives. The Nigerian system that ISEC brings, which we all support, is a system that is high on corruption, that politicians have the money to bribe judges. Politicians have the money to do so many things to kind of influence judges' decisions. But here is the tweak. When you provide judges better living conditions, better working conditions, better pays and all of those things, there's a lesser incentive for them to fall, for them to be vulnerable to all of those bribery that comes from individuals and private individuals. This is where today's debate hinges on. Even if we say that we want to place judges higher than every other person, by the nature of the office that judges hold, it is justified for judges to be given preference. Because if the judiciary is bought, if the judiciary is influenced, then it means that the common man you want to protect does never have adequate protection again. So in this debate, two things I'm arguing. I'm saying that even in the worst case scenario, we say that we want to prioritize judges, it is okay, because judges' comfort translates to the comfort of the vast majority of poor people. But ultimately, that the influence that exists in government is such that it's overwhelming on judiciary. But even if, when judiciary officials like judges see this kind of incentive, what happened? They see it as something that is institutional benefit and not tied to the fact that they are, probably government trying to influence them. If government wants to influence judiciary or the judges, government will go privately and they will not create a public spectacle. ISEC should prove in this conversation why government has to do a public display of gift that's against giving them privately to a kind of influence their decisions in court. That is ISEC's burden in today's debate.
Thank you very much. Over to you, Mr. Gosulisek.
So, firstly, the first and major thing that Victor Bison says is that the fact that these gifts were given publicly means that the intent of the executive is clear, right? And it's not malicious, that it's just for the sake of giving them houses. If that is the case, then that same executive should not have if the executive genuinely cares about the welfare of judges, then that same executive should be concerned, should not have a problem with constitutionalizing the welfare for judges. Put it in the constitution, right? Like as it is in other countries. Victor knows in the UK, in the US, in Canada, all of these provisions are constitutional. That once a person becomes a judge, right, it becomes the case that they are entitled to these benefits, not on the benevolence of the executive, right? Victor says that it's okay that the next government might come and not prioritize this. Welfare is just something that should be on or off, because as he says judges are suffering. They can't even, they are not even getting food to eat. They are so poor and meager. They don't even have houses to live in, so they can be easily influenced and what have you. First off, he forgets that judges take oaths. They swear oaths to judge in all, to dispatch their duties in all fairness. So if that's not enough reason for them to be objective in their rulings, then I don't know what will be. I don't know if giving them many houses will make them comfortable. Our politicians today, Victor Opia, most of them have a lot of houses, have cars, have businesses within Nigeria and outside Nigeria. But when people are greedy, they still want to embezzle national treasury and national funds. They want to embezzle money. So whether or not you give them gifts, if this problem that Victor says that they are suffering and one problem exists in the first place, it means that you won't even solve the problem by giving them houses. So even if you give a judge housing today, if somebody comes again and bribes them with money, with a lot of money, they are still going to get the money. If they do not believe in the oath that they swear in their legal profession, as the case may be, to be judges that are fair. So I don't think that analogy even stands at all in the first place. But secondly, Victor says because it's public, then their intent might be genuine. If their intent is genuine, I'm not arguing that. I'm saying if the executive intent is genuine, pass it into law. Let it be constitutional. Whether or not this government leaves, judges know that they are entitled to participate to this kind of benefits when they become judges. Victor says that, oh, it will provide incentive. No, it's not an incentive when it is left to the arbitrary benevolence of the executive. But when it's constitutional, whether or not the president likes you, this is supposed to be something that you get as a benefit. So I don't think we have so much of an argument from Victor Bissong, right? So the INEC chairman in and of itself, but Victor says that, oh, that already in the system, we already appoint, the executive already appoints judges. So that means that they're already dependent on the executive. Firstly, if that is the case, then there is a need for us to reduce the level of indebtedness that judges owe to the executive, right? But then secondly, the executive also appoints the INEC chairman, right? But then if the president goes ahead, all right, and give houses to the INEC chairman or give particular benefits to the INEC chairman, what does it do? It places doubt in the mind of people about the fairness of the electoral processes, as the case may be. So that's the problem. One point, I think Victor ran away from actually rebutting the cases I brought because he knew how strong that they were. Judges' independence should not be something that exists only on paper. It also needs to exist in the minds of people. We need to believe that the judiciary is independent, right? So if for the masses to believe that they're independent, there has to be less and less interference of the executive, of government directly to judges. So when it is institutional, people have lesser incentives. So people can trust the judicial processes because people need to be able to say, I will go to court. These days, people don't even want to go to court because they feel like the judges can be easily bribed and all of that. And these things have been going on for far too long, right? You and I don't even trust the judicial systems anymore. So moves like this goes a long way to strain the credibility of the trust and beliefs that we have for the judiciary, which is a problem. We need to solve that problem. So now notice one thing: all of the benefits that Victor highlights in his side exist in my side, right? Because I say let these benefits be institutional. Put it in the constitution. Constitutionally, a judge is entitled to this, right? So all of those benefits that Victor highlighted exist. Victor needs to tell us why. It has to be mandatory, that it has to be to the discretion of the executive and not a constitutional right that judges should have these benefits, right? So he needs to tell us that, okay, look, I don't think that it should be a right. They should be whether like, okay, although you already said that the government can come today and like to give to them. No, welfare packages like basic things like housing, shelter and security are not things that should be on the discretionary on the discretion of the executive. It has to be something that individuals are entitled to as virtue of being people who are serving, who are in active service of the nation, as the case may be. So I don't think all of that really matters. In the end, we want to solve a problem. The problem is we need to reinstate the trust that people have in the judiciary, and actions like this does not help us achieve that. But then secondly, if you feel like judges are suffering, like you're saying, then make it constitutional that they are deserving of all of these benefits. Why is it so? It's because when it becomes on the hand of the executive to give these things, they weaponize it. Okay, let's even assume that the current government is not weaponizing it, right? That we debate these issues for the furtherance of our democracy in the long run, right? Is this sustainable? No, it is not sustainable this way. If we want to have a sustainable welfare plan for executives, then it is better that we do it in a way where it is constitutional and not one that is left to the absolute discretion of the executive. This is not what we want.
Well, in the absence of any question or contribution, yes, you do have the right to reply. Okay. You can reply in 3 minutes. 3 minutes.
Okay. So basically, I think that I wish Isaac was here because this would be rather enlightening to him than all of those gimmicks he's playing. Today's debate is very clear that is running away from the actual clash in the conversation. So firstly, I explained earlier that why should the government go public for something they have intentions to create a public, probably response or backlash. If you go public to do a particular thing that people will definitely backlash you for, you will never even want to do when there are better ways to handle this. That is the actual justification in the entire conversation. So ISEC's job was just to show us how government will leave other forms of bribery and maintain a public spectacle that will create backlash in the minds of people. That is the debate, and ISEC has totally abdicated his role in having this conversation. ISEC also talked about the fact that welfare should not be selective. The idea is, even in section 12 of the chapter 2 of the Constitution, from section, I think, 13 to 23, also, that talked about fundamental principles of government, right? Fundamental principles and objectives of government. There are things that governments are supposed to do to society, but you cannot hold governments responsible or take them to court because government fails to do that. The reason why that is so is because resources are not always available to cater to all the needs that society faces. For instance, there are so many needs for roads in different parts of the country, but are the resources available? Now, it becomes unfair for you to say, take government to court because government cannot do the Calabar-Itu road. That is very unfair because government cannot be doing Calabar-Itu road and be doing the road in Lagos and be doing the road in Kano. So that is where executive how's it called, discretion comes into the picture. What happens is the president now prioritizes. This is where welfare is now prioritized. This is where certain persons get certain things based on certain realities. For instance, over the years, probably different governments have not seen the need to institutionalize this kind of housing for judges. But currently, there has been a growing need. In fact, that is why even new laws are made. When new realities emerge, there's a need for new laws to be made to accommodate those new realities. Judges have been complaining. During the last retirement of there was an event held by judges, and one of the retired justices appealed to government for government to provide accommodation for judges. Why was that so? Because that particular justice experienced a system that was unfavorable. Now, if government signal heed to that particular call, that particular appeal, and now build houses for judges, people now complain that government tries, the government is trying to influence judges. That influence cannot exist in the conversation because there are better ways to influence judges and not necessarily coming publicly to kind of give them money and all of that. That is what today's debate is all about. I understand that ISEC is actually running from the conversation, and I explained that housing is recent, but corruption is not recent, right? Understand, if you see that people will definitely lose trust, the public perception would actually reduce. The actual thing is that there has been a public perception that the judiciary has been bought, or the judiciary is biased over a very long period of time. This housing scheme is just a recent scheme that just came into picture. So that housing is not the only thing that will change, that is not the only thing that will create that public perception of a corrupt judiciary. The narrative has been there. There are so many private individuals in Nigeria, they tell you that the judiciary favors, or the court favors the wealthy persons. That those wealthy persons are private individuals and people who hold political offices who have ability to influence governance. That is how people try to influence judges. But when government decides to give institutional benefit to judges, it will be unfair for us to now see it as government trying to influence judges against the actual intent of providing proper welfare for these judges.
I'll just read the questions and contributions that have been done in this debate. Okay, so from Udemobong Etim, don't know if I pronounced that name correctly. He said, I feel like the argument that if government wants to build houses for lawyers, they should also create welfare for other professionals does not hold, because government cannot solve all problems at once. It's one at a time. Plus, welfare will be given based on urgency. I think this was a contribution to ISEC's case, and I think ISEC would have been in a better case space to respond to this. But then you have a contribution, or a question rather, from Anye Khan Deborah, and she says, Victor, considering the constitutional principle of judicial independence, do you not think that the judiciary should have constitutionally granted funding for essential infrastructure and welfare rather than relying on gifts from members of the executive arm of government? Could such gifts create a perception of dependence or compromise judicial independence? That's the question from Aneka and Deborah. I don't know if you got the question.
I did. I explained it earlier. The Constitution of Nigeria already subjects the judiciary to the executive arm. The mere fact that the president is the one that appoints the Chief Justice of Nigeria is a clear is prima facie evidence that the Constitution, not Tinubu, not WIKE, has subjugated the judiciary to the whims and caprices of the executive. And the point is simple. If that is the case, why then should we have to blame a particular arm of the particular government, for instance, now, as being concerned about judicial capture? This is clear. The Constitution says these people are under you because you appoint the Chief Justice of Nigeria. You swear the Chief Justice of Nigeria into office, right? How then can we now argue that in you providing welfare, that is when it become influence, or that's when it become bad for you to influence these people? Influence already exists by the constitutional provision empowering the president to do that. But secondly, we must see this not necessarily as a fact of influencing the judiciary, because by appointing the Chief Justice of Nigeria and the Justice of the Supreme Court, the president can influence the judiciary. That is it. So it means clearly that it is not necessarily tied to this particular gift. This particular gift is not a personal gift. It is a gift that is tied to these individuals because of the offices that they hold. So we cannot necessarily say that that is the case, that this president is trying to, take away the power or subdue or kind of get the judiciary to be under him. The Constitution already empowers him. So we cannot do that. But the fact is, we cannot necessarily say that, okay, that the president, they shouldn't make a constitutional amendment. That is something that could be in the offing. We support that particular thing. But what we are saying at the instance is the provision of accommodation for judges, judicial capture, or it is legitimate welfare. That is the debate. So I'm saying that it is legitimate welfare and not judicial capture. Because if it's judicial capture, there's a constitutional provision for judicial capture already, which empowers the president. So it means that the only influence we can draw from this particular action is that the president cares about the members of the judiciary objectively and wants to provide them better living conditions.
Thank you very much. I just discovered that Mr. Isaac is back, and I'll just go over a little bit of the speech that you gave in response as a reply speech, and I would expect him to respond to that for the fairness of argument in this debate. So, Mr. Isaac, when you were out, we gave Mr. Victor the right of reply, and he said that your argument on making it a law has a problem in that even Chapter 2 of the Constitution in itself is non-justiciable. So even if we make it a right for them, they cannot, enforce this right against the government in that is non-justiciable, and that's like a response that we expect from you. And beyond that, you also have certain responses from Udemobong a team, and I'll read it out so that you can respond to it together before we can now take Ruth Vera, whose hand is up. So she said, I feel like the argument that if government wants to build houses for lawyers, they should also create welfare for other professionals does not hold, because government cannot solve all problems at once. It's one at a time. Plus, welfare will be given based on urgency. Then she goes further to say that also the fact that these houses were built long before now does not rule out the intent of the executive. Government is always known to strategize and plan for election long before the actual elections. So we would love you to make responses to this contribution made by Udemobong a team in this debate.
Okay, yeah, thank you very much. I think I'll respond to Victor Bison first when he said that even if it is constitutional, it is not justiciable. I don't know what that means. I really, honestly, do not know what that means, right? If we live in a system...
So let me just give you a background of non-justiciability of a particular thing. So when we say something is non-justiciable, it means you have such rights, but then you cannot enforce it against the person who owes you such rights. Unlike other rights that you have, right to life and others, if those rights are breached, you can hold the person who breaches those rights. But then non-justiciable rights, like things contained in Chapter 2, the fact that government is supposed to provide education for people government is supposed to provide good roads and all. While these are promises made by them, the citizens cannot enforce this right against the government for certain other arguments that lawyers have with regards. So that's like the background for non-justiciability of rights.
Yeah. So exactly. So that's what I mean when I say I do not understand it, right? So in my own part, it me is where it goes ahead to talk about how most of the time, benefits like this are weaponized, right? So you cannot enforce such a right. But then, if that becomes the case, then we should ensure that this becomes an issue, a thing in and of itself. That when it's concerned, because we are talking as though Nigeria is one barbaric nation that cannot just respect law and order. Then we should just scrap the judiciary altogether. Then we should not have them. If you cannot respect the law, cannot respect the constitution, then we should not even have them. I'm giving you real life instances of countries like the UK, in countries like the US, like countries like even South Africa, right? These individuals have these things as constitutional rights. They need to have them. Proper housing for judges. It doesn't necessarily have to be that. It should not be at the discretion. So like whatever, and then the other lady in the comment that says, oh, we shouldn't talk about that in relation to other workers who are suffering from the bare minimum requirement for sustenance. My argument is still all encompassing, right? My argument says let's fix the system such that individuals at every level have bare minimum requirements for sustenance. Things like housing are things that we should have long ago fixed. But in our world, where in our country, senators have a lot of money allocated to them as wardrobe allowance, right? So the executive just have a way of just giving money to who favors them, who is their guy, right? And then, for example, we have ASU crying for their entitlement and their gratuities, that is their right. But then, like Victor says, like you and Victor say now, it's not just civil. You cannot force them, right? We cannot force them to do it. It's their right, but we cannot force them. And these are the problems we are facing. We need to have a system where people, instead of cherry picking and giving people gifts out of the benevolence of the executive, let it be institutionalized and being let the system work. What I'm saying altogether is that the system should work. The executive should stop weaponizing the system. What Victor and WIKE have been doing is weaponize welfare that they're supposed to be for everybody. People are supposed to have the right to. They weaponize it to people who are loyal to them. So in the same system, you have a soldier who does not have where to stay, who is suffering, and then the same way you have his superior who has so many houses and so many cars as benefit from this same government. It is not balanced, right? So this is where the problem needs to be. With things need to be moderately justified, distributed, and even distributed constitutionally, because people deserve welfare when they have worked for a country. In Nigeria, things as little as pension is things that our parents have to suffer and cry about for donkey years, and they're not given these basic things that they deserve. Why? Because you guys say it's not justiciable. You cannot force them to do it. We don't want a world where it's at the discretion of the executive to give people basic access to welfare. I disagree with that. It is regrettable. We need a world where it is enforceable constitutionally that as a government, you owe these individuals a responsibility of basic welfare. If judges need houses, let the houses be something that every judge should deserve, not one that it has to be on the free volition of the executive. If they like, if the next government comes, like Victor said, they don't like, then you don't give them this benefit, right? So I don't know what the debate is about. Because if the debate is about like not giving judges benefits at all, then I will not be here. The debate is about whether or not it should be something that should be handed down to them by the executive, right? Nobody is going to argue that judges do not deserve to have houses. I'm not that intellectually dishonest. If that's what the debate is about, then Victor should not be having this debate in the first place. The debate is happening because we are debating whether or not this should be something that should be free, be at the discretion of the executive of the government of the day, or a world where these benefits come as a constitutional right for people in particular stages, right? So, like I would like to emphasize, if we say that teachers, doctors, soldiers, judges deserve welfare, then they should get welfare. It should not be at the discretion of the government of the day. So when the government that is nice comes, he gives lecturers houses and basic welfare. But if the other one comes who does not feel like it, he doesn't give it to them. Welfare is a basic access that people, individuals should have when they are as reward for the dedication and service, and not one thing that is left to the discretion of the executive. This is so easy to understand. I just hope that everybody gets to understand.
Victor, you have been asked to respond to the claim made by Mr. Collins.
Okay. I think this is quite easy to respond anyways. The truth is, if this housing was given to senators, for instance, Nigerians would not say that government want to influence senators. Nigerians would say that senators are making so much money, why give them more? The reason why Nigerians are so particular about the judges is because of the critical positioning of judges. It is because of the role judges play. So people are careful to say that when you give judges, even if you buy them small cars, they will say you are buying them small cars for you to bribe them. That is the fundamental narrative that exists in our society, whether it's from the beginning of the government, in the middle, or at the end. And I said again, that this housing was not just given to them. Yes, they didn't go and buy already built houses. This house, something they bought land, built houses over a long period of time, and they just finished these houses and gave to these judges. It would be unfair for us to now tie this particular housing scheme to the fact that these people are bringing it at this critical time because of elections. Understand that the moment government decides to give members of the judiciary anything, it is inferred that government wants to influence them. But the fundamental question is, should these judges not have anything? Should they not have proper housing? Should they have proper cars, proper living conditions? Should their salaries not be increased? If they want to increase the salaries of judges, people will still complain that judges their salaries are increased, and as a result, the government wants to influence them. But the fundamental thing is that these judges are still humans living in society. They are not robots. They need the cars, they need the houses, they need the increased salaries because of the living economic challenges currently in our society. These are needs that these judges cannot take away from themselves. Who provides these needs? I mentioned in my first speech that government's responsibility is to provide these needs, not individuals. So if for every time government provides these needs, we tie it to government decision to influence them, it means we are saying that we never want judges to have anything. That cannot be the spirit of today's conversation.
Okay, Mr. Isaac, Ruth Vera made some responses to your speech, and I don't know if you would want to respond to some of the responses that she made to your speech.
I honestly would not really want to respond to Miss Vera, because I think that in this debate, I don't think she was listening to me altogether. If she was listening to me, she would not even have some of the responses that she gave. So I would assume that other persons have been listening to me. But the problem is that even Victor Bisson, who has been listening to me, is talking as though he has not been listening, or he just wants to respond for the sake of response, right? So Victor says judges need houses. Like, as if at any point in my speech today, Victor up here, I have said that judges should not have houses, right? I believe if that's what the debate, if the debate was about whether or not judges should be given benefits, then we should not have this debate. I've said it's like in 1 million. Then we should not be debating this today, because Victor, please respond to me. Tell me, what is this debate about? Yes, let me hear you.
Okay.
I think it's for the debaters to determine what the debate is about, because
not Victor up here, Victor Bisson. Please tell me what this debate is about. I want to know what we are arguing about actually.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. The fundamental question is two. Why should we tie whatever incentive judges get to the fact that government want to influence their decision? Two, why should government create a public spectacle by giving judges houses publicly when government have other ways they can secretly give judges bribes and still influence them? Two questions, answer them.
Okay, so Victor up here, if I respond to this question, will this debate end and I win this debate? Very good, Victor Bisson. So Victor Bisson says firstly that why is that judiciary, why should they be treated differently? I would say No, Victor, Victor, unmute. No, unmute your mic.
That's not what I said. That's not what I said. That's not what I said.
Okay. What?
Guys, I said for every time government gives judiciary whatever institutional benefit, people would always tie it to government trying to influence them. Why should that be the case?
Exactly. That's why I said that. Why should the judiciary be viewed differently when it concerns benefits that the government wants to give to them? Right? Why is it that when the state government, the government gives judiciary benefits or judges benefits, as the case may be, it draws attention. Victor Opia, listen to this, pay attention to me. Avoid the distractions by the side, but this is where I win this debate. Right? It is because, firstly, there are different agencies in the government and there are peculiarities that affect different agencies. For example, medical doctors are not even, they are essential services that always have to function even on holidays. So doctors do not even go on holidays. Even though they have a right to know all of this, they have to work so that the hospital system is active every day because of how dicey and delicate their responsibilities are. So when that becomes the case, it also means that there are different areas. So even when there is strikes and what have you, the security agencies are not even allowed to go on strike. The Nigerian police force do not just say they want to go on strike because of how dicey their duties are. So that means because of how peculiar their duties are, they cannot just decide, they cannot be treated like every other person. So the judges in this instance cannot be treated like that because of how dicey the role that they play is. Like I said early in this debate, I said that we need to be sure that the judiciary is not only independent on paper, but even in the minds of citizens. People need to trust the judiciary, right? And that's the reason why we need to be very, very careful with the things that we do that concerns the judiciary, because whenever that happens, it strains the credibility of the trust that people have for judiciary. And guys, let me tell you why this is bad. It means that people lose trust in the system. There's a reason why people don't want to even vote in elections anymore. Why? Because they've lost faith in the electoral processes. Because they feel like no matter what I do, my vote will not count. Why? Because we see how. Listen to me, Victor. Listen to me. You are gesticulating too much. Because I'm answering your question, I'm winning this debate. Firstly, it's because people do not have trust in the electoral system. Right? Because we feel like the INEC chairman is cherry-picked by the government of the day. In the past election, for example, people said that Muhammadu Buhari cherry-picked Atahiru Jega, who was the INEC chairman at the time. And people lost trust in the entire electoral process because they felt that he was somehow. Now imagine that it now goes a long way to now begin to give houses to INEC chairmen and people who are directors in INEC and say it's because of welfare. People would lose total hope. Now, firstly, there are people who did lose hope in elections. Now people are beginning to lose hope in the judiciary. That means our system is dilapidating severely because people now begin to say, even if the election goes south and we go to court, we feel that the executive has strong-armed the court and the judiciary. That is why I said my proposition stands that it is better for us. Victor says that it cannot work because it's not justiciable. Then Victor Opia, let's make it justiciable. Let's ensure that when it is in the constitution, it is mandatory that welfare packages are given to people who are in this system, right? So if it's supposed to be for judges, let them get it. If it be for teachers, let them get it. If it be for soldiers, let them get it mandatorily. Then we hold presidents, we hold executive arm of government accountable. It did not provide these basic things that are welfare packages that are provided for these individuals, right? In response to Vera, I'll respond to Vera because she's my friend and I know her. So I'll respond. I'll give her dignity of the response. Vera, nobody is saying that, these judges should not receive benefits. I'm saying that they should receive benefits, but there's a need for us to understand the peculiarity of the judiciary. And now he says that it's unfair for us to assume that when the government does something, they have ulterior plans. My darling, our government, the executive arm of government in Nigeria, has ulterior plans, right? That's why you see them doing elections. These individuals go and eat corn by the roadside. Please, you will not gaslight me or blackmail me intellectually. Vera Diwa. right? I'm saying it to you. Now, you and I both know that they have ulterior plans. Don't make it look as though we are debating abstract. We are debating it in Nigeria. We know what we are talking about. It is entirely, intentionally a targeted effort aimed at capturing the judiciary when these things are done. So if we want to solve the problem, let it be constitutional. Let's ensure it that when something is in the constitution as a welfare arrangement, like, because now what my stand does is that it is open to even all other people, levels of workers in Nigeria. Soldiers, policemen, teachers, judges, anybody who works for the government. When we have that institutionalized, they are going to be guaranteed that when it's time for you to get a house, you will get it. When it's time for you to get your gratuities, you will get it. Not a world where we don't say it's there and then because we cannot force them. Let's be at the discretion of the executive. It is entirely regrettable. I'm saying this again, that because of the peculiarity of the judiciary, we cannot handle them like every other arm of government or every other agency in government. We have to handle them differently. We have to ensure that they are not only independent, but they are also perceived by society to be independent. I'm so proud to be on this side.
Okay, Mr. Victor, you just have 2 minutes to respond. Please, we are almost behind schedule.
Okay. Isaac is angry that his beloved Vera decided to toe the path of truth this time around. So it's okay. I will protect Vera. Vera, let me protect you. The thing with discretion, or the reason why government has that discretion, is that there is scarcity of resources, right? There's a difference between your due and an incentive, whether you're working for government or working for private sector. The reason why we cannot be talking about salaries and gratuities, because those things are due these people. Those things are it's their right to get all of those things. But we move on to incentives. So incentive talks about giving them cars so that they can function better. It's not their right. It talks about giving them better living conditions so that they can function better. Government, based on the scarce resources, cannot necessarily provide for every single person at every point in time. That's why government prioritizes. Somebody mentioned that they prioritize based on urgency, based on importance at that particular point in time. The reason why we can never say that all of these incentives should become justiciable is because government does not have the actual resources to satisfy all the welfare needs of every single person. It means that when medical doctors want housing and they cannot get it from government, they take government to court. The kind of challenge that will cause on every government will be so much that we will not even have a government to run. So, Isaac, let me explain to you again. Government cannot put welfare incentives in the constitution. Those things come at the discretion of government, considering the resources that is available to government. It is from their government checks based on urgency and all of those things. The reason why the presidency has power to veto again is that the executive is the head of government and the president is the head of that executive and the head of government. There are some powers that are given to the president for president to exercise discretion. For instance, even power to assent to a bill. President can decide to, discard it, even if at the end of the day, the Senate can still recall it and pass it. But the president has certain prerogatives. There are presidential orders that are not necessarily laws made by the legislature that have the force of law. That level of discretion must exist within the executive arm. So if your issue is discretion, then we cannot necessarily say discretion is bad ultimately. This is the debate. There's a difference between your due. Your salary is your due. If you're not paid, you can do other things. You can take the government to court. But if an incentive to make your work better is not paid, you cannot. And government should not be denied the discretion to decide which one is more urgent, because the constitution is not living. The constitution is a fixed document. Government is the one administering that constitution. That is the report, and that is the reply I have for you. Isaac, apologize to us. Just apologize to us.
So, Victor Opia, please, I want to apologize to the house. Please, can I be allowed to apologize?
Please, 2 minutes for your apology. 2 minutes for your apology.
Thank you very much. So, my only crime, my only offense in this debate is to speak for a more holistic approach in solving the problem of welfare. That's my only crime. And all of you people want to crucify me for wanting to speak for a holistic solution, right? if my crime is that, and also saying that we should get the welfare packages of individuals institutionalized, and then Victor wants us to believe that the government does not have resources. If a government does not have resources to provide basic amenities like housing for people, then that government is in a very, very big problem, right? So if like he says, the government does not have the resources to provide, the government is building duplexes for judges, expending billions of naira to build duplexes, exorbitant houses for judges. But somehow, Victor wants us to believe that the government does not have the money, so it has to be at their discretion when they choose to. The problem with this system is the system faults itself, right? But let me give you guys examples, right? In the UK, in Canada, but let's even go to South Africa. South Africa is an African country. In South Africa, judges' remuneration and conditions of service are governed by legislation and institutions such as the Independent Commission for the Remuneration of Public Office Bearers. So it is that's how it's supposed to be in every same system. There is a system that is in charge of that responsibility. So even if you want to provide these gratuities, let it be that commission to say, oh, right about now, it is the turn of judges to get houses. It is not so hard to understand that it should not be the case that it will be on the discretion of the executive. Victor has said a lot of things today, and when I come here, he tries to seal the pot that is leaking and tries to use something to come to block it the other way. But the point is, you said that it wasn't possible, it wasn't just stable. Then now you say government does not have the money. I don't know who amongst us here believe that the government does not have the money to provide basic amenities like roads and housing for people who have served this country at particular level. So I'm not saying that we should say we are giving these houses to everybody that are served. But if you say that judges deserve to have houses, right, then let them have the houses constitutionally. Let it be there. Let there be a commission in charge of providing all of these welfare packages, right? So it should not be given to them by the benevolence of the executive. This is the only crime I have committed today, to call out the lies that Nigeria does not have money, to call out the lies that we do not that the intent of the executive arm of government is clear. This is my only crime. This is my crime that I've committed today. I don't know. I don't really want to be forgiven.
We thank both speakers for that very fine response. We're already behind time, yeah. And of course, we would have loved for them to engage even late to the night. But of course, we are working with a schedule. And there is a question that is in the I noticed there was a question in the chat box, but then we cannot respond to it because of time. So yeah, it might most likely be responded to on our Facebook page. So I'll just go over what has happened in this debate, and after going over what has happened in this debate, the next thing I will now talk about is, what we're expected to do. So with regards to this debate here, Victor Bison came here to tell us that judges are humans and they pass through a lot of things like an average human. It is therefore important for us to institutionalize certain incentives. He now in response to the argument of, what about the idea of partiality and all, he tells you that if government really wants to be partial, that they won't come through a public spectacle like making houses and something that will make everybody talk about it. And that in itself, it was his response to the idea of partiality. Beyond that, with the argument of justiciability that making it a law that came from ISEC, he responded by telling us that, if we begin to make this thing justiciable, if we make this a law, first of all, it's non-justiciable. But even if we make it justiciable, government doesn't have the resources to handle all these particular issues while dealing with other issues within their reach. So it is therefore very important that this should be an incentive in itself. But then we should not make it a law like ISEC advocates. But ISEC comes to tell us that the idea of this debate is different. That the debate that giving judges this welfare is important, is the giving of judges this welfare should the idea of impartiality, rather the idea of independence and impartiality of the judiciary should be something that exists in the mind of an average individual in a particular country. So it's not just about giving welfare to judges in itself. The individuals who are going to be subscribing to this idea, and even the masses who are have these places as their common hope should also have the idea that these judicial housing and reserves are independent. And then he responds to this by telling you that, oh, the idea that it's not going to be discretionary in itself is false, because it tells you that, well, most times, as we see in Nigeria, some of these are done strategically during election, or sometimes they are given only to high-ranking public officers rather than giving to anybody. And he now tells you that if you really want to do something that is impartial and something that's independent, you should not just target public officers, not just target judges in itself. You target all other public officers like soldiers, civil servants, the police, and all, which also suffer the same thing. But because of the partiality that exists, that is why we target people who are going to save them after the election has been done. And he now tells you that the core of this debate is about the separation of powers, and that is one thing that we must prioritize. Of course, he's not saying that judges, he kept on repeating that he's not saying that judges do not deserve certain form of welfare, but then it's very important that even in the giving out of this welfare, that we are able to show the masses that this judicial arm in and of itself is still independent, that we should be able to create this idea in the mind of every member of the society that the judicial arm is still independent. And I think this was a very wonderful round, because it really convinced me on both sides. I mean, they were asking me who's going to win the debate. I'm like, if I was a judge, both persons actually won this debate because they presented wonderful arguments on both sides. And one of the reasons why I love this is that it's not a tournament; it's a place where we come to contest reason, so that we can find out how to respond to particular claims on whatever side we decide to go after this debate. So we've come to the end of social advocacy debate head-to-head round for today. But beyond that, we want to beg you that you go to Facebook and Instagram and follow us on our pages, Social Advocacy Debate Network, so that you can constantly receive updates on what is going on. We'll be posting subsequently, we'll start posting reels of what has happened in debate from the first session up onto this session that already existed. And we want you to go and like our pages, like and follow rather our pages on Instagram and on Facebook. And of course, the name remains Social Advocacy Debate Network. Once again, thank you for joining us on today's head-to-head session. See you next week, Saturday. Thank you very much.